So after having the introductory words from each institution, I want to say a few words about how I believe that this workshop should work, how I see this workshop, and hopefully we can take that notion and take it further tomorrow. And I'm going to be quite general with what I'm going to say. Tomorrow morning I might be a bit more specific on how things should operate on the roundtables on their own, but let me start. Okay, I have to say first and foremost that I've been doing events for quite a long time. I've been doing events for the last 10 years or more, a few events each year. This event is different. This event is a bit more special. I'm coming from the human rights sector and the humanitarian law sector. So if I'm doing my PhD on the right to life of combatants, so completely the other way around of taking care of the relief operations. However, this notion is very important to me, the whole notion of legal aspects of relief operations, because I found that in a way this is a very, very important place, very direction that both institutions and both hats that I'm wearing in this capacity as Director of Research of Terrorism, Belligerency, and Cyber at the Minerva Center, and Director of International Organizations at the IAJLJ. I can say it faster. Yeah, but try to say it 3 times that fast. Then it gets problematic. I've also been a guest lecturer at the Israeli School of Humanitarian Action from time to time. So I kind of see myself going from hat to hat. And the notion of legal aspects of relief operation is something that I think is very, very important. And I'm glad that all of these institutions have actually gathered to help promoting that notion. So let me start with a very, very recent example. A situation in Mozambique. So we know that the tropical cyclone Idai caused extensive damage in Mozambique, Malawi, and Zimbabwe. And that caused the death of more than 1,000 people, and hundreds of thousands of people were in need of assistance. A lot of people were internally displaced. And there was a cholera outbreak at the area, and severe damage to essential infrastructure. A few weeks after Idai, there was a Kenneth cyclone. There was another cyclone at the area, even more damage, even severe, graver situation. Several relief organizations came to assist. I don't think we can count them. I don't think we want to, but we can look at a few Red Cross societies, MSF, Doctors Without Borders, CARE, Save the Children, the UN World Food Program, even the Israeli organization Natan showed up and then provided assistance. A lot of states, a lot of forces, and many organizations. An extensive amount of donations were directed at the situation at Mozambique because they suffered the gravest damages out of both cyclones. Now, the situation of Mozambique was brought up again a few weeks after that because of the allegation of sex for food that were raised by Human Rights Watch organization, and there were a lot of attention in the media towards that report. Following that report, and the UN has notified that they're going to establish some kind of inquiry into the situation. Now, apart from these immediate questions about sexual exploitation abuse, there are a few characteristics and questions that I think we can take that example, that situation, and look into in order to see how we can analyze this kind of situation. We have various of relief operations in the area. I've mentioned a few organizations, UN Operation, Red Cross missions, NGOs. Each organization has its own agenda. Each organization has its own expertise. Each one has its own protocols and resources that they work on, and they may differ between the organizations. They not only differ between the organizations, there is not always communication between the organizations, so there's a lot of going on the ground. Some of the relief operations are there for an ad hoc operations for a specific period of time, and others, like the organization CARE or Save the Children Foundation, are there for the long run. They've been there and they're going to stay there, and they have a very, very different perspective from the ones who are there for ad hoc mission. So we start and ask ourselves, what happens in practice? What is the legal basis for the operation of such missions? How do we make sure that everything is done professionally? And what happens when things go wrong? What happens when things don't being done professionally? So let's take for example a medical mission, right? We have people providing medical help. On what legal basis can a foreign doctor write a prescription to someone local on the ground? They are not registered there. What can be done with that prescription? And what happens if those drugs are not accurately fitted for the local population? What if it's not based on the right research, the relevant research on the ground? How can we know that that physician has the expertise to deal with the treatment that is being asked, he or she are being asked to provide? What happens when they cause harm? What happens? Who can they sue? Who can follow that? Who can treat? Who can take care of the victims following a damage done by a relief operation situation? Who will be liable for negligence or malpractice? And it's not just physicians. You can take any aspect of relief operations, from doctors to providing food to constructions and many other things. Will the victim have an answer? That's one of the main questions that I think of. Now, can we hold NGOs that provide aid accountable for any corruption within the local population, sexual exploitation and abuse within the local population, not by the aiders, not by the relief operations, but in the context? The sex for food situation in Mozambique wasn't by the aiders. It was by the leaders of the local community who took advantage of the food and the facilities and the goods in order to take advantage of the local population. Can we hold the NGOs accountable for such violations? Should we? What measures would an NGO require to take in order to prevent such exploitation, abuse, or corruption? Now, that's just a very, very small glimpse on one situation in Mozambique, but these questions and this situation and these scenarios are relevant to any relief operation. Question of accountability, effectiveness, efficiency, quality, and protection of all persons in the field, working off the aid of the relief operation, the local population, people in between, people being there under peacekeeping operation, and refugees, displaced person. Everyone should be taken care of, should be cared about. Now, some will say, and I think I now refer to that in a way, that when the time is pressing and people are starving, we cannot put the emphasis on process. And we talk a lot about it with regard to extreme conditions and the rule of law. Let's take care of the people right now, and later on we'll see what happens. So it's about taking care of the people, and let's put the process in a hold. Let's put the process in a less emphasized place. Now it's about food, health, shelter first at any cost, and law and order and other so-called privileges later on. Now, personally, I agree with the first part. Enabling is the key. Making sure that people in need will get food, will get the treatment, and will have roof above their head is essential. But I don't agree and I don't accept that at any cost. There have to be limits, there have to be some framework in order to do that, and this is what we are looking for. We have to make sure that there is a protection to the people who are vulnerable at that situation. Now, the discussion over legal aspects of relief operation is by no means a new discussion. Several elements of it have been dealt with practically and academically for many, many years. We are not claiming to be groundbreakers in this field by holding this event, and this is not the first conference or workshop on this. Where do we differ? Where do we differ? What's still different about this conference and workshop is the angle that we're trying to bring to the discussion. We're trying to be fair. So far from what I've seen, I'm quite new to the framework, but I've been looking at other events, I've been looking at other conferences and workshops. They usually tend to look at one angle. They usually try to look at one specific angle, and they're not trying to bring it from all around. What we are trying to do here is to do a rounded, comprehensive, methodical discussion on legal aspects of relief operation. This is what we're trying to do here, and standards and regulations have been written and adopted. We have Sphere that has developed the core humanitarian standards, as we will hear tomorrow from Anini Nadig, and WHO has developed the EMT initiative, as we'll hear from Dr. Odeda Benigoren. Secretary General has developed the UN Zero Impunity Initiative, as will be elaborated by Stephanie Cartier. Am I pronouncing good enough? In tomorrow PSCA roundtable, and then Larry Botinik will also explain about the UNHCR perspective on these issues. But in my view, that's not enough, taking these specific ones. Regardless of how you evaluate, for example, the UN Zero Impunity, which has a very good elements of it, but also received a lot of criticism, it is focused on the UN systems. It doesn't address many difficult questions and problems of the aid sector in situation in aid sector which are external to the UN. And the Aid 2 movement, which Pina has mentioned briefly, has articulated quite well. We hear a lot of problems with regard to sexual exploitation abuse in the aid sector, which is external to the UN framework. Now, same goes to standardization as the core humanitarian standards and the EMT. The struggle to implement is a key element, and without extensive implementation, one can only hope for improvement, but there's no necessarily a way to guarantee it. Now, I want to clarify the starting point of where we stand. Using regulative regime as a solution is very easy. It's the easiest solution. It's very easy to over-regulate the aid sector and to put burden and put the NGOs liable for anything and everything in the relief operation. But this is inevitably throw the baby with the bathwater. We will actually cause more damage than benefit. Any process, regulative or not, mandatory or voluntary, must be done step by step and hand in hand with the aid sector. Some hurdles will probably be put on the aid sector and relief operations in order to improve the conditions of the entire sector. But the approach today is that the relief world is about cooperation and collaboration between all actors, between the affected populations and between the NGOs, the relief operations, between the UN systems and Red Cross, and any attempt to improve must be within that direction. So this is where we stand. At the beginning of this conference, we're looking at a robust, productive, and forthcoming discussion. I think I can safely say that I speak on all organizations that are party to this conference, that we want to make this event a milestone in the discussion of legal aspects of relief operations. We want that the policy paper that will be produced out of this workshop will become an essential part towards a practical solution to these issues. And we are asking you, participants, to share with us that aspiration and in some way that burden of that workshop. So we have about 40 people on the list of participants, people coming out of 6 out of 7 continents. I'm counting Israel as Asia, which is geographically accurate, although we participate within their Eurovision. And Australia, yeah. Now, everyone in this room is relevant to the aid sector. All have something valuable to contribute to the roundtable discussions, and someone who comes from the field of international law, I can say that there was one principle that guided me when I sent invitations to Australia, to Brazil, to New York, and to London, and etc. And that principle is very, very simple: reciprocity. I accept to get invitations to each and every location. Now, due to the short time we had to prepare that workshop, I think I have to thank each and every one of you for stepping up and actually coming from farther away or from close, or actually making sure that your schedule will work to join us. Now, due to the short time that we had, we didn't ask for any paper or submission or something like that. We asked for some talking points, and we're looking for the discussion. But we still want to urge you to publish that discussion. We want to take the inspiration from that workshop to write in blogs which are relevant in your profession, and if you're in the muse, also develop full academic articles. We are still within that framework, and we want to produce more and more out of it. So we are actually calling you to take that further into writing as well. I want to thank all the partners who have made that event possible. I think the Minerva Center and IAJLJ and the Israel School of Humanitarian Action, Eli and Michal, of course, and Aran from the Minerva Center, and Yulia is helping us with social media and everything on that front. We have Iris and Ronit from the IAJLJ, and of course Eli and Pnina and Einav, who helped us and enable us, and actually told you affiliation. Some way I'm affiliated with each one of the organization, but I think I'm privileged enough to be affiliated with organization that actually allow me to go further with some of the ideas I have, which are not always mainstream. You don't always see people coming, let's bring aid workers and relief operations with the lawyers. Usually when the aid workers will hear, let's meet the lawyers, they will turn around and walk away. And then, sorry?
Run away.
Run away. Absolutely. But we went for it, and I think we've managed to compile here a very, very interesting group of people coming from different places with different agenda, and I really look forward to tomorrow's discussion. I want to thank in advance to the moderators of tomorrow's discussion. I want to thank Cynthia for coming and doing that. I want to Professor Radai for helping us with the PSCA, and Itamar Man, who is currently not here, but also will moderate the third discussion. Basically, that's it from me. But I'm going to switch to the next element and introduce our keynote speaker, Lieutenant Colonel Eyal Dror. I'm going to do it briefly, because I think you're going to do it much better when you're going to start talking, explain exactly what you've been doing. You know what? You want to first switch the computer, and then I will introduce you. So, thank you.